Today I want to talk about consciousness because that's all I've been thinking about 24/7 for quite a while. It's so fascinating that, like, kind of these beings, whatever we are, in a chimp-looking meat bag, can think about our own thoughts and even think about things way deeper than thoughts. And I say think, but really it's like a seeing, a knowing, an intuition. There's a whole different set of senses that come into play when you take a deep dive into here. Now, as I've said before, I believe that consciousness is basically the main subject of the Bible and other religious texts. Not that there's no other subjects and there's not tons of other content, but when you look at like the Garden of Eden story and things like the ascension of Christ and all of this stuff, even if it's literally true, and I could definitely see that being the case with Christ, man, what an odd person. I'll just stop there. But like, Genesis, I do believe there was a flood. There's tons of evidence for that. Tons of evidence. Almost all cultures have flood myths, on top of geologists like Randall Carson, anyways, that have made that reality pretty much undeniable. But, was it just Adam and Eve in the garden? I don't think so. When Cain killed Abel and got exiled, he was afraid to go out because he thought he might be killed by the inhabitants of some other city. So, what is that book really about? Well, let's just suppose that humans have been in contact with a superior entity or superior entities or whatever. Call them angels, call it God. I think when you go back into ancient texts, you find that there is a source, like an almighty, an all-powerful. But whether you're talking about the Bible or the Sumerian tablets or any of that other stuff, you're going to find other entities as well. For example, the entity in the garden that most people think is a snake because of all the medieval paintings, nah. That word snake just means basically a scaly one. It's a seraphim, okay? The book is odd, to say the least. So what actually causes the fall in the garden, like the fall of man, the suffering of having to labor and sweat, the suffering of having to bring forth children, was the onset of consciousness. And there's been speculation that, when God cursed the woman and said, now your childbirth is going to be painful, that what that was really about is like the expanding of the cranium on an infant, because to pass that through a vag, oh God bless women. Man, you got to be fucking brave to pass that through your body. Woo, man. No wonder childbirth was so lethal, like before we had modern medicine. Oh gosh, man, it's so brutal. And my wife, bless her heart, gave birth to 4 children without painkiller. I mean, and let me just divert into a tangent. There's all this stupid talk in the media and all this shit about men and women being equal, not equal. Like, it's not about that. It never was about that. Get it through your head. That's not even the way to look at it. That's way too binary. That's like an old school, fucked up consciousness way of looking at groups. So who's stronger? Like, I installed a 225-pound motor on Monday, but my wife has birthed 4 humans out of her vagina and torn it every time. Jeez, you know. And by the way, I'm not trying to go TMI here. That pretty much happens universally. Any woman that has a child, it is so intense, and the pain is so great that they don't even notice that they're tearing themselves open. Who's stronger? No one's stronger. It just, you know, it's different types of expressions. So, you know, we got to get the binary thinking out of our minds, because that's just toxic media bullshit propaganda that I believe is used to stir us up and to make us believe the illusion that we're all fighting each other. It's a fucking game. It's smoke and mirrors. I'm telling you right now, walk into any working class environment and you will have millions of things in common. Now walk into a meeting of the elites, you'll have nothing in common with them. That small little handful of people that's making us think that we want to kill each other, we don't have anything in common with them. Whatever they are, I have no idea. That's a story for another day. Anyways, where was I? The knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so that's the beginning of consciousness. That's when humans realized they were naked, they started to hide, they felt shame. Okay, so we see the onset of the ego, because if you're going to ask this question, what is good and what is evil, you have to have an ego, because there has to be an I involved in that exploration. What is good for me and what is evil for me, right? So the ego accompanies the knowledge of good and evil, right? And the ego is necessary in a way. You know, it's like a cocoon that the butterfly must hatch from. I watched the ego form in all 4 of my children, and it's fascinating, because in order to, well, let me back up. This world that we live in is dominated, like the natural order right now, like under this regime. The regime of the elites, the regime, whoever the they is that you know of pulling the strings, even if it's just this political party or that political party. It's actually both. But anyways, the regime that is ruling the natural order completely, all the way from humans down to bacteria, the law is survival of the fittest. What is good for me? What is evil for me? I will maximize good for me, and I will minimize evil for me. And when you really boil down fundamentalist religions and cults and things of that nature, that's what it's about. The pursuit of good and evil. That's why there's 633, I think, laws in the Torah. I mean, Jesus Christ. Pun intended. Man, you know, how are you supposed to fucking live that way? So it's this very deceptive, empty pursuit of good and evil. And here's what I think happens. I've been thinking a lot about this, but remember how Jesus said that if you judge, whatever judgment you deal out will be dealt back on you. A lot of people interpret that as that, you know, there's this divine judge that's going to strike you down according to the judgments that you deal out. Now, Christians don't even take this verse seriously. I mean, I don't know how they ignore it. They love quoting things like, don't look at a woman to lust after her, or you have committed adultery in your heart. But they won't follow. The point of the Sermon on the Mount is to teach you that you can't follow it. If you think you can follow it, then you are still deluded in this lower form of consciousness. And if that sermon doesn't kick your ass, then you're blind. And that's what Jesus said, or meant when he said, like, you say you have no sin, therefore I know you're blind. Like, you say you don't have demons in your shadow, therefore I know you're blind. So what happens when you start to judge yourself? Okay, what am I doing that's good? What am I doing that's evil? You set up a law. Like Paul said, even the Gentiles who did not have the law become a law unto themselves. So every human on the earth has done this, and it's part of our ego. It's just the fucking cocoon. We were never meant to camp out here. It's a good stage to be in when you're a child, but when you're an adult, you need to hatch out of it. So, where was I? Oh, jeez. Knowledge of good and evil. Every human by default lives this way. Okay? Now here's the problem, is that when you work out good and evil, finally, you work out some system where you're deciding what's good and what's evil, you have to judge yourself, of course, right? Because you have to figure out, are you actually adhering to the system? But when you judge yourself, you automatically judge others. You automatically project the system onto everyone else, because whatever master you live under, like, you view the whole world as being under that master. That is an inescapable fact of psychology. All right, so you become judgmental. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is you become terrified of demons. You become terrified of what is evil. And when that happens, you tend to suppress things down in what like Jung called the shadow. And this is the part of yourself, like the closets in your house you don't like to go. These are things that you're either ashamed of or you feel like are inappropriate. And to be fair, some of them probably are, because if you leave demons down in dungeons long enough, they will mutate and turn into crazy fucking monsters. I mean, just bloodthirsty. They will knock your walls down and wreak havoc in your life. They will attack you just they will come up out of the abyss, just like in the book of Revelation. Okay. And that happens because they turn into monsters when they're not cared for. These demons, and this is what causes a lot of confusion, because people are like, oh my God, I got this crazy sexual lust, what am I supposed to do with it? Like, for example, all the Catholic priests that were abusing children, man, come on. Just give up celibacy. Jesus, man. Just go fuck a woman. That way you don't have to sit there and burn in lust. Like, that demon doesn't have to mutate and find its fill on a child. Like, just fucking feed it something. Demons are a lot like children. Exactly like children. Not that children are demons, but demons are like spiritual children. They're like these immature, kind of unformed, sort of broken angels inside of you. And so you have to learn, just like any good parent does, okay, I'm going to give you what I think is good for you. I'm not going to starve you. That would be stupid. I'm going to give you what I think is good for you, and I'm going to not give you what I think is bad for you. Meaning, like, I might give you some ice cream, but I'm not going to let you binge on ice cream every day, right? And I'm not going to tell you no ice cream either, because, as Paul said, the law stirs up sin, because the law starves demons. And so, instead of being celibate, go have sex in the right way, right? Because, you know, if you walk away from this thinking I'm teaching like a anarchist type morality, then you're just fucking stupid. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say that right now because, and I have to say it that strongly, not because I'm trying to be an asshole, but because I was burnt at the stake for teaching this stuff. And I'm sorry, but if you don't understand it, just walk away. Because, not that I'm saying that it's right, but I am tired of being misinterpreted. At least if you are going to debate this, understand what I'm saying. But I have been too abused by people that can't understand even one sentence of what I'm saying. So that's just religious trauma coming out, and I'm just making the point that well, I'm getting older and I'm tired of it. I realize that a lot of this flies in the face of religion and things like that, but I think it's all in the Bible. I think it was all there all along. It's just like you need to update your view. Just like Jews had to update their view via Paul's teaching, like we need to update our views based on the current discoveries of spiritual, astronauts and psychology. Like we have got to update our view based on the things that we've learned in 2,000 years. The idea that God is so dead that there's nothing else to learn, that that's basically the view of fundamentalism. Like, I'm just going to believe what the Bible says. It's like, if you think that and you want to approach it that way, that book will kill you. It'll straight up kill you because it's way too powerful and it's way too cryptic to the point of I can't help. I really wonder what the origin of that book is. I mean, we know that the Sumerian tablets are full of things in the Bible, so the Bible seems to be a passing of the torch with the Sumerian tablets. But we also know from the Sumerian tablets that the source of the Sumerian tablets is way older. Where does that come from? I don't know. I do know that spiritual beings speak in parables and in symbols and my only explanation for that is that spiritual truths are, even though they can be represented by the three-dimensional space, they're not three-dimensional truths. It's not 2 + 2 = 4, and that's why Jesus had to use parables. He was basically saying, look, this world is a shadow of a higher dimension. Therefore, I will use shadow forms to teach you about the real form. Like, I will use a seed to teach you about, like, the Word of God and how your heart has to be prepared and all of those things. And even in parables, there's often like multiple meanings. Like you can take it symbolically, but then you can go even further and take it further symbolically. I mean, things just continue to unfold to the point where I don't think I'll ever get to the end of that book. I mean, what a magical book. Magical book. Magic with a K. It is a grimoire of unbelievable power. Okay, where was I? Okay, so we've got this ego that is really the survival of the fittest. It's fight or flight. It's like, I'm going to maximize my good and minimize the evil. I'm going to maximize my money and minimize my suffering. So what do you do with that? Well, that is a demon, okay? Let me use this example. And this is true. You can do this if you want. Get a bird feeder. Get lots of birds coming to it. Hang a mirror in front of that bird feeder. You'll find that the vast majority of the birds attack the reflection because they view it as an enemy, okay? Now, there are birds of higher consciousness, much higher consciousness, and we know this from other studies. They're the corvidae. These are crows Blue jays, believe it or not, blue jay is in the raven family. Ravens, these kind of things. When they see the reflection, they stop and look at it with no reaction, only curiosity. Like they are there to learn. And when you see your reflection in whatever mirror you're looking into, whether it's the Bible, whether it's some other version of spirituality, and that doesn't mean all things are mirrors. Don't ever look into mainstream for the fucking mirror. I mean, try looking into CNN or one of the mainstream news sources, or really any super mainstream source. That is not a mirror. That is like that's like the warped mirrors in a circus, and you have to warp yourself to actually look good in that mirror. Find a straight mirror. Ancient texts aren't perfect, but they are straight mirrors. Look in that mirror. Don't see yourself as an enemy. That is how you starve demons, is you're afraid to go down into the dungeon. You look in the mirror, you see what's there, and then you figure out, okay, what are the names of these demons? You'll notice that, like, Jesus demanded the demon know the name. Like, give me your name. And so the demon said, Legion. So you need to know the name. Now that demon was out of control. Like, it had gone way too far. And so Jesus takes it and he casts it into a herd of swine. Now these swine plunge all, they break through a fence and plunge off the mountain. And that's what happens when your demons get too powerful. Remember, because swine, like Jesus said, don't take your pearls and cast them before swine. Swine has always been this symbol of, like, reprobate man, just people that are out of control. I mean, think about, like, Jeffrey Epstein. That's a swine. Swine. And what do demons do to swine? They cause them to break through even natural barriers, like a fence, like a divine fence, where the divine was like, hey, don't go over this cliff or you're gonna die. And then everybody blames the divine for the swine cracking its skull on a rock. It's like, please, man, the fence was right there. The swine should have never tried to embody such a wicked demon and let that thing mutate and drive them into the grave. Remember, that dude was in a grave. He was in a place of death. He was, every symbol about that story is basically alluding to these out of control demons. So Jesus exorcises that demon. But I will say, like, that's an extreme case. In other cases, all Jesus had to do was wake up a sleeping child. And if you're living by the ego, then spiritually speaking, you're a child, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, like, seriously, nothing wrong with that. You never hate yourself for it doesn't matter what stage you're in. Even if you're the dude with the demons, you never hate yourself. Like, you always trust in divine grace. But if you find yourself as a child, just know that there is a waking up that will take place, and it's basically your consciousness moving up to a higher level. Not that that's a clean break, right? Because consciousness, nothing happens in a binary way ever. Everything in nature is analog. It varies. In fact, even progress looks like this. Yeah, boom, boom. So ideally, you're not even putting yourself on a scale or psyching yourself out, but to talk about things in a comprehensible way, I have to create some sort of a some sort of like a linear / binary format, just to help us conceptualize what I'm talking about. So when you become a spiritual adult, you hatch out of that cocoon as a butterfly, and that's, if you've ever heard the term ego death, that's what it is. And interestingly enough, caterpillars, they get real fat. They get tired of being caterpillars. Man, it's fucking hard to move around in these trees when I'm 20 times my body weight. If you look, like, they hatch out microscopic. I say 20, but forget the actual number, but they may multiply their body weight something like 500, not 500%, 500 times. I mean, it's unreal. But they get to the point to where moving becomes burdensome. And they want to be able to move in another realm, because right now they're stuck in 2D. And what they get this urge, like, I need to break out. I need to find another dimension. So they put themselves into a cocoon, which is figurative of the grave for Christ, right? And then they liquefy their entire body. Like, a lot of people don't necessarily know this. So they form that shell, and then everything liquefies. In fact, I'm not even sure that scientists, even today in 2024, really understand what's going on there and how it actually happens. I mean, imagine your whole body just turning into soup, and somehow all of that rebuilds into a butterfly. Like, what the fuck, man? I believe in evolution, but there has to have been divine involvement at some level. I don't understand where. I don't understand if it's like on a continual basis of the divine, just sort of like pushing out a mutation here and there. I don't know, but for sure the divine was involved, either way in the beginning or behind the scenes. I don't know, but that soup begins to form like new organs. Everything restructures. Everything. It's not like the caterpillar's eating like new nutrients. It's not getting anything new. Everything that it was restructures, and then it hatches out into a butterfly. And they're very, very clumsy. If you've ever watched them, it's really fascinating. First thing they do is take a big old shit. And to be fair, that probably does help get off the ground. Then they fold their wings out, and they start to pump blood into the wings. So the wings fold and everything dries out, and then they try to fly, and somehow they know how to fly right off the bat. All right. So that, that's like the ascension of Christ. It's this idea that what served you as a child, it is the same thing that will hold you back as a spiritual adult. So the caterpillar, it needed the worm phase, right? Because you can't just hatch out of an egg, microscopic, and become a butterfly. It doesn't work that way. Like, it needed a time to just like be in 2 dimensions and learn stuff. It does learn plants, it does learn trees. In fact, it will go back, a lot of them go back and lay eggs on the leaf, or the leaves that they used for feed, right? So they are learning super valuable things during this stage, but they're grounded. And I do think that the ego is a valuable stage, and it's not evil. It's none of those things. And I think it's more helpful to view it just as the dungeon where your demons dwell. I don't think it's healthy to view it in the Eckhart Tolle way of like, we need to eradicate this. Now, to be fair, I've studied some of his teachings, but not enough to know if that's his true belief. Maybe he's just putting things in words that people can understand. I don't know. But whatever the case, I don't believe that the ego needs to be viewed as evil. I don't believe when you see yourself in the mirror, you need to attack yourself. I think you just need to understand that the ego is the dungeon. Like, it is the cocoon. It is the chrysalis. It's helpful to view your desires and, things like sexuality, the need for companionship, like all of that as caterpillars. And you take care of these caterpillars and you feed them and you nurture them. And then the idea is that as they mature, they become butterflies. So in my 20s, here's a perfect example. In my 20s, my sexuality was like a fucking wasp. This was like early 20s when I just wanted to poke everything that came near me. Oh God. I'm sorry, but look, I'm a tradesman. I'm gonna be crude, but look, it helps to understand things that way. I'm not going to talk to you like you're a fucking child. I live in the real world. And my spirituality is not the sheet-wearing, funny-speaking, turban on the head type spirituality. Not that I'm making fun of a people group or anything. In fact, there are a lot of cultures where it's like that. And I say turban, but headdress, whatever. That is not me. I work in mechanical rooms, break my back on rooftops and things like that. So I'm going to talk to you exactly like I would talk to anyone else and exactly like I talk to myself. So, that aside, I was the bee, right? No, not even a bee. Honeybees are too divine. Let's say I was the wasp. And so what needed to happen there? That caterpillar, that nasty little, like, selfish, fight or flight, survival of the fittest, that little thing needed to go into the cocoon and hatch out. And you'll notice that caterpillars are always ugly. Always. With some exceptions. There are some that are highly toxic, and so they have markings for that. There are others that have markings that mimic eyes and things, but for the most part, all of it is for camouflage, because they are scared to death that they're going to be eaten. You ever seen a caterpillar run away from a bird? Doesn't go well. But butterflies are so beautiful because they have a lot of confidence. Even though they look kind of flimsy as they go through the air, they're pretty agile, and the only birds that can really catch them are like the flycatcher species, because they're just, flycatchers are, oh my gosh, I mean, they're like the fighter jets of the bird world. If you've ever watched them pick a fly out of midair, it's unbelievable. You have to see it just right. Basically, they have to be silhouetted against the sky, and you have to be kind of sitting under them. And then when the bug comes along, bam! They just catch this bug out of midair. It's like, whoa. Yeah, total tangent. So yeah, you find these things in yourself. And if they are caterpillars, you care for them. If they're butterflies, you use them to go places. You use them to have a good life. But either way, you never, ever hate the stage. The caterpillar doesn't hate itself. It's just a caterpillar. But there's this idea in these ancient texts and in pretty much all forms of spirituality that have been impactful to the human race, that there's this process of taking these things and maturing them into something divine, something that dwells in another dimension. All right, so that's a little bit about the shadow and some of the shadow work that I've been doing, actually. it's important to understand that when I talk about this stuff, it's not because I have it down. It's because this is stuff I'm looking at. It's like I'm laying open the ancient text, the ancient textbook, and I'm looking and I'm like, whoa, that one hit me hard. So yeah, this is all part of the human experience. I have all kinds of caterpillars. I am not talking to you as someone who's full of butterflies. We need to change that saying. It needs to be, if you got butterflies in your stomach, that's a good thing. We need to change that to caterpillars in your stomach. That's the anxiety. Caterpillars in your stomach. You hatch that anxiety into divine trust, then you got butterflies in your stomach. But anyways, that's enough for now. Man, this stuff is just so interesting. Let me tell you, I do like HVAC, but what I like even more than that is working on a machine, thinking about this stuff. It's like, there are laws and principles that help us fix machines, and I'm realizing that they're the same like tools and things. They're just in a spiritual form, so it's not tangible, but you can build up the same arsenal of tools spiritually to work on your inner machine. So one thing that I'll say right now that I've always had in mind but never said before on the channel is, when I say conquer the machine, I'm not just talking about nuts and bolts. Conquer the machine, conquer the flesh bag, conquer the ego, conquer the caterpillar. See, that is the machine. That is the Pinocchio that you transform into a living being. All right, enough of that wild talk. I got to go in here and get some coil cleaner. I fucking hate cleaning coils, but hey, it's overcast. The divine has smiled upon me. I finally can work in weather that is not 95 degrees and full sun. This heat wave has been rough. I'm telling you, rough. Okay, that's enough for now.